In today's episode, we're talking about rupture and repair. By the end of this video, we promise that you'll have a better understanding of fights, how they affect friendships, and what to do when you're in one.
Cue the intro.
Welcome back to another episode of Fantastic, your favorite self-improvement podcast hosted by us, two best friends, siblings. My name is Ian Solano.
And my name is Joie Solano. We are here to help you become the best version of yourself. This season is all about friendships.
Yes.
And today we're asking ourselves a very interesting question. Why fighting a friend might be a good thing.
Right. And today we're talking about fights. And so we figured that the best way to structure this episode is to take you through a story time of the biggest fight that I had with our older brother,
Kurt.
Gulp. Brother reveal.
Before we start, though, I wanted to define rupture and repair since we'll be talking about it a lot. And rupture and repair is basically the disconnection and reconnection that usually happens after a fight or like a miscommunication. You know, it's the rupture is like an event that happens in your relationship and you're just like, it could go bad, but then you can repair it. So, yeah.
A rupture and repair is basically a fight. It's the process of going through a fight.
Okay.
It could either happen with a friendship, with a romantic relationship, with your family. It's a fight.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Okay. Well, when you have a rupture, though, it can go one of two ways in your friendship. You can go, boom, we're better than ever. We're strengthening our relationship because through this fight, we went through a hard time. And guess what?
But now we're better.
We're better. But the other way is that, you know, your friendship can explode in your face and then it can die. We're trying to help you avoid that. So hopefully you learn something and not go through the explosion of your friendship. In this case, for my brothers, though, they had this fight in Vietnam that almost ended their relationship.
Nope.
And it all started when my brother Kurt graduated from college. And he was like, let's go on a trip. Yo, let's go on a trip.
For real, let's do it. I'm down.
They go on this trip, and during their trip in Vietnam, they're at a cafe. They're hanging out. Ian accidentally drops Kurt's phone. Kurt is like crashing out. He freaks out, gets so mad, and this huge fight breaks out. And, you know, like, that's the start of the fight, basically. Like, that's the rupture.
I would say that it was, like, the biggest fight with, like, the highest levels of emotions. But something important to note is that before we even had a rupture, we had a lot of unresolved paper cuts.
Well, paper cut is basically these small moments of like fights, arguments, miscommunications that while that moment or that event itself isn't that significant, having all of those over time, especially unresolved, it adds to the wound.
Right.
And it adds to the rupture that will happen eventually. Okay, but I didn't go on this trip. And I was just wondering, like, how did you guys feel before you guys went on this trip? Because I
was like very excited.
Yeah, it was like your first time hanging out, actually, like outside the country.
It was our first time hanging out outside the country. It was my first time going to Vietnam. And so I was super, super excited. It was the first time that we were hanging out outside of our parents. It was a big moment for us. And I think going into it, I was super excited to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, like we're going to make new memories. This is the stuff of like the stories that we'll talk about like in the future. And again, we're having a really good time. We've been to a bunch of food places already. Like we're enjoying the sights. We're at this cafe and we're trying to figure out like what exactly to do next. And it was during this time that all hell broke loose.
During their trip in Vietnam, they reached a breaking point, and the situation worsened because they didn't develop any emotional resilience growing up. So after the trip, they didn't speak for months.
Okay, so we threw in some vocab words there. I would say the breaking point was when I dropped the phone, and I was expecting him to just be like, oh shoot, hey, is my phone okay? Is it cracked? And the phone wasn't cracked because it was actually dropped from like 2 feet from the floor.
And brother always has an OtterBox. Like, he has a good case.
It was a thick case. And so when he started to crash out, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, I was like, what is going on here? Like, why are you yelling? Why are you getting so upset? But he went on about like, you're always like this. You always do this. You're like, you never respect me. Like, you never respect my things. I was like, dude, it's not broken. Like, we gotta, por favor, like, let's chill.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. Like, I can't imagine just dropping someone's phone, and it not being cracked, and then someone like exploding in your face.
Yeah.
But I had interviewed Guya, or I had interviewed Kurt, and I asked him like, so what was the fight like for you personally? He's like, actually, Joey, throughout the trip, before that moment even happened, he was actually super annoyed with Ian the whole trip because Ian
Crazy.
apparently was like super annoying, like nagging him, asking all these questions like, do you even know where we're going? Like, do you even know where we're going? Like, can you have the phone? Like, I don't even know if you know where we're going. Like, that type
Yeah,
of like,
fake news. I'm just playing. I'm sure that happened.
Yeah.
I'm for sure that happened because also like the relationship that I had with him at the time was like a lack of trust in his abilities. If I'm being so honest.
yeah. And I think you also, around this time or around this age, you also had a bit of an attitude in general. And I think like it definitely showed because you're like, you don't even trust your brother. And then also it's like,
Yeah,
Bruh,
it was like the attitude was specifically towards him because the dynamic that we had developed growing up
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like you act like you know everything but you don't because he would always like degrade me or like he would make me feel less than. And so like that's kind of the context of this whole thing is that like prior to this breaking point where everything like kind of crashed out and like everything was revealed, it was kind of like, oh, we thought it was fine. But it was this one moment where I was like, dude, why are you crashing out on me? I literally just dropped your phone from like 2 feet from the ground. It didn't break. We're chill. Why are you getting so mad? And I think for him, it was like the emotions were piling up to the point where he was like, you're always disrespecting me. And this is just one of those moments. And I'm like, that's crazy because,
what do you mean?
yeah, what do you mean? Like, this is just our relationship.
Other than the breaking point, the other vocab word we mentioned was emotional resilience, which is basically when two people go through a bunch of challenges in their relationship, but through those challenges, they're able to bounce back and make their relationship stronger.
Right. It's like, to give you like an analogy, a metaphor, I don't know which one it is. It's like if you have a house and you have like a bunch of winds coming at it, right? Eventually over time, you'll learn how to better build the house so it creates a better foundation and it has more resilience to the wind. For our relationship, my relationship with my brother, growing up, we never had any resolution to any of our fights that were actually genuine resolutions, right? Whenever we fought as a kid, it was never like, oh, this hurt me because of XYZ. It was just like, this hurt me. I'm sorry. Okay, next. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it, like to go back to the house analogy or metaphor, it's like if there's a bunch of wind and then you're like, oh, I'll put a piece of duct tape on it, you know?
Right,
It just
right.
like covers maybe there's a crack on the wall, but it's not gonna do anything.
Exactly.
It's not gonna help long term. And I think like now you guys are already in college, or he already graduated college, so it's been so many years. And then there's just like you guys have no experience whatsoever on how to like
Deal with it.
how to like regulate your emotions with each other and how to like actually fix it.
I think here it's really like to go back to our title of why fights might be helpful for a friendship is because like prior to this fight, we didn't even know that we had a lot of unresolved things. We kind of just forgot them, right? And so when this happened, it was like everything was coming out and it was like, whoa. I guess we're not super chill. Because I thought we were chill going into the trip, but also he thought he was chill. But then when this small thing happened, it was like, it was huge. I remember when this happened, I ended up going to a different place, I went to an internet cafe and he didn't go with me and I didn't have any way to navigate myself because we were using his phone to like do the maps and like we didn't have any internet service besides his phone. And I remember the whole time thinking to myself, like on my way there, I was like, what type of brother does this?
Like leaves you.
I was like,
in
what type of brother
Vietnam.
like leaves me with no internet, with no way to contact anyone? Like, I don't even know where we're going in terms of like where the next hotel is. Like, what the heck? So like the whole time I was thinking like, bro, we're done. Like in my head, I was just building up so much resentment because I was like, I would never do this to Joey. Like I would like no way I would do this. And so like the whole time I was just like so upset and it was like building up to the point when we started talking to each other, I was like, dude, we're done. We're not. I remember saying to him specifically because I thought this was a banger line. I was like, we're not brothers. I was so serious. I was like, we're not friends. We're not brothers. Like, I don't want you. Like, we're going to go through this trip and we're going to finish, but we're not going to talk after this. Like, we're so done. Like, it was like that level of emotion where it was like, it seemed like a small thing, but to me, I was like, I'm freaking done. Like, you treated me like trash my whole childhood.
Yeah.
We are not brothers no more, my friend. Like, not my friend, actually. And so Yeah, it was just like it was a big fight for me.
Yeah, I think having those words like said to each other, then also the actions backing up, where you're like, bro, you're not even gonna help me. You don't
Yeah.
even have enough respect as your like younger brother to like help me out.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot for sure.
But eventually, they were able to reciprocate vulnerability, confront their shadow intimacy, and begin the repair of their relationship.
Hearing this now, it seems kind of cheesy that we formatted it this way.
It does. We were like, hey, Mad Libs.
Mad Libs.
Yeah.
We thought it was, I think it's still a good format, but it does feel very formal. But basically what this means is that during this trip, we had a huge fight and we weren't actually able to resolve it even after the trip. It took us several months until my brother ended up calling me and he was like, hey, Ian, I was talking to one of my friends and he's telling me about his relationship with his brother and I don't want that to happen to us. Still, in my head, I was like, you're a freaking liar. Like, you are deceiving me yet again. You know, like, something is going to happen where I lose my respect for you. You know, like, I feel like you're just going to do something again that just will leave me feeling like you're not the person I can rely on. And it took a lot of time for that to, like, kind of happen, where I was like seeing his actions.
You were like actually starting to trust him.
I was actually starting to trust him. But really, the only reason that we were able to start this repair process was we were both able to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah.
Shortly after, a few months after this, or at least when I graduated, what ended up happening. So wait, no, this is actually 2 years. It took 2 years.
Yeah, it took a long time. Like you guys, okay, so
Yeah, we weren't talking for 2 years. It wasn't just a couple months, actually.
yeah. So the thing is, when I had asked her, I was like, how did that even happen? Because I feel like you guys are super close now. They're literally roommates and have been roommates for like a couple years. But basically, what had happened was a couple months after Vietnam, they didn't speak. Kurt did give that phone call, and then Ian still was like, oh, whatever. But but Ian was also still in college, so they never had like an actual reason to see each other unless it was a holiday. And when we're with our family, I feel like they put a face like, oh yeah, like haha, we love each other. For you and,
which we do love our family
Yeah.
now, but I think like, you know, even before, there would be moments where I would see him, I'm like, hey bro.
like roll your eyes
Yeah,
right
I'm
after.
like, I'm just here, I'm here to hug you just because I have to. Yeah.
Yeah, but 2 years later, they were able to actually hold space for each other and hold space. Okay, but they were holding space for each other and like making a space where they were able to be honest. Because I think with your conversation like 2 years later or like around this time 2 years later, you guys had more honest conversations about like, well, when I was younger, I felt like there was so much pressure on me as the older brother, like I should have taken care of you and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And like I also had to deal with being the first person in our family to go to college in America. Like I was super stressed about that. And then with you, it's like I'm always trying to like be close with you, but you like literally push me away. And,
I was like, I remember being mad because like, again, this is the first time that we went to college, right? Like our parents didn't go here; they're immigrants. I'm an immigrant, and so I remember the conversations. A lot of my resentment was like, why didn't you teach me how to navigate any of these systems? Why didn't you tell me like take SAT like prep stuff, whatever? And like I don't know. I think we just had different perspectives. I remember us talking one day, and it was just like, oh, you got all the attention from mom and dad. And he was like, no, you got all the attention from mom and dad. I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that. But in order for that to happen, those conversations, we really need to hold space for each other and like show some vulnerability. And I think what happened is when you're in a fight, what tends to happen is the things that come out. So we mentioned shadow intimacy. Shadow intimacy is just like the things that come out when it's like these really hard emotions, like very heavy emotional situations where you don't have a filter on things, right? Like when I said, you're not my brother anymore, like that was me because I was like, had such high emotions during that fight that I was just saying how I truly, truly feel. And I feel like fights are able to provide that space for you because now everything is on the table, right? You might have a fight with your partner and it's like, you always hang out with blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, I didn't even know you were jealous about blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
And it's like during these times when your real emotions come out and that's when you're able to like have actual repair.
Yeah, I remember. This reminds me of this one argument I had with a friend where she like asked if I could wear a certain color of a prom dress, and basically, I don't know if you've watched the movie Princess and the Pauper, but she was like, I said, "Oh, I want to wear pink," and she's like, "Oh, I want to wear pink." Wait, what if you wear blue? the poppers color, and she wears pink, right? And I was just like, oh, that actually really annoyed me. And the shadow intimacy part of that was that, like, I was actually really insecure that she was rich and I come from a poor background. So I'm like, no freaking way you want me to be the popper, bro. And like, I think like I would have never addressed like that insecurity I have unless it was for that fight. Like, if it were not for that fight, I don't think she would have ever known that that was an insecurity. And then we like resolved it. But yeah, I think having fights does bring out a very vulnerable, scary side where you literally are like exposing yourself, but it also gives the other person more context as to why you feel all these emotions.
And it gives them the opportunity to like repair it, right? Like when I became vulnerable with my brother and I was like, these are my insecurities and these are the pressures I feel like I have being in this family, then he was able to say like, you know what, I feel the exact same way. And I was like, oh shoot, like we have the same level of pressure. And I think it's like very comforting because when you're putting all of your emotions out there, and this happens during a fight, like the other person has either two ways that they can handle it, right? Like one, they can comfort you and make sure that you feel validated and heard, or two, they just kind of brush over it. And I think based off of their own reaction, you kind of understand what type of person they are in relationship to you, right? Whether or not they want to be someone that stays in your life. And I think that only gets revealed when you have a hard fight.
Yeah. And I think it was a really good idea that you guys did take a couple years or a couple months to actually have that conversation instead of having it right away. Because if you guys did have it right after your fight or your trip, I think you would have both been very defensive. But giving yourselves that time to, like, I guess, sit with yourselves and, like, really think about your relationship gave you, when you guys did have that conversation, you were ready to hear each other out completely.
Yeah. And I think, like, to give ourselves credit, like my brother and I, like, it took a long time. Like it took 2 years of us living together. It took a lot of time of us like trying to resolve fights that would come up even after this one, right? Like we would have fights in the car, and understanding how the other person navigates fights is like super important, because the way that I approach fights is completely different than how he does it. Like for me, I like to be confrontational, or I like someone to confront me.
Like, what's wrong?
Yeah, like I want them to be like, hey, I understand you're upset. Tell me why. Or like, are you upset? And I will say like, yes or no, right? Like that's happened to us too. With him, homeboy does not bring it up until like maybe a week or two later.
Yeah,
but he brings it up, you know, because he wants to take the time to process it himself. Whereas for me, I want it where the emotions are high, and I want us to talk through it together.
And you guys would have never known that.
Yeah, we would have never known that.
Hadn't you had this like huge rupture. And it also helps you now repair all your like fights now.
Yeah.
Like, because you know how to communicate with him.
Yeah, and it's really good because now we've been able to like re-understand each other. Like a lot of the stuff that, like a lot of the stories that I told myself of how he was growing up is completely different now, because now I understand him more, right? I understand the POV that he was coming from, a lot of the pressures that he had as a kid, a lot of the things that like he was going through, because now we've had a chance to like talk about it. But that only happened through years of talking and communication and like these little tweaks that we had in our relationships and setting the right boundaries. So if you're fighting with your sibling or someone that you love and it's like super important, just know that it's not something that can just get fixed in a day. Like it will take a lot of time. I just want to emphasize that because I know a lot of my friends, when I told them this story, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys were like not close. Like the same thing when I tell them about like us, where it's like our relationship was really bad in the beginning, where I was like a very harsh tiger brother and I would make you cry all the time, but like that took years for us to kind of fix that, you know? Anyway, so overall, the fight provided the transformative potential that we needed to resolve our conflicts and become greater friends. Yeah, we be here dropping some vocabs. I honestly hope that like you guys are vibing with this.
Yeah. So basically, transformative potential is the potential the relationship has to transform. I know that sounds so stupid because I literally flipped the words, but literally like when you do have a fight, or this fight offered the ability to like, or the potential for you guys to improve the relationship.
Right. We were like able to like
relationship.
Reset boundaries. We were able to like better understand how we communicate with each other. And so in this case, because there was a rupture, we decided to repair it instead of like having it go kablamo. So I think that's why fights are really good. And I think hopefully like you kind of have a better understanding of how they can help a friendship. I feel like this episode was honestly really fast.
It was. So I did want, we still have a couple of takeaways. So stay tuned. But going back to what you said about like why it's important to fight with a friend or why it's even beneficial. Yeah, like one, it exposes all these truths, but also like it does. I think you feel better once you do repair your relationship. Like coming back from such a huge fight, you're like, damn, we got this. We went through this, and now we're better.
Now we got that emotional resilience.
Yeah,
Clock it.
yeah.
It's giving horse.
Wait, I was thinking of another animal, but I forgot.
Anyway, the first key takeaway that we have is that it's okay to fight. It doesn't matter how often you fight, unless you fight like every day, but what matters most is how you're able to resolve those fights.
Yeah.
Like, please let it be known that my brother and I still fight, and I still upset him, and he still upsets me. But at least now we're able to like talk about it and say like, how did that make you feel? Like, how would I do it differently if I could? You know, what should I look out for in the future so that way we don't run into this problem again?
Yeah, the reflection or the way you can spot a healthy friendship is based on how you repair it. Whether you repair it in a healthy way or an unhealthy way, or you don't even repair it at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that fights are just completely bad. Like they want to avoid fights altogether. But I like to celebrate it.
Yeah.
Like I have this running bit just for myself. Every time I fight with someone, I'm like, oh my God, is this our first fight? Which sometimes I just think it's so cute. You know what I mean? I think it's just so funny. But I think like fights are worth. Like it's good because like you're a human being and it's natural for you to fight, you know, to be upset with something because you also don't want to be friends with people who are exactly like you. Nor would you want to be partners with someone who's exactly like you. And so it's natural for conflicts to happen, but it really matters on how you fight.
I also think fighting is just like a way to evolve the relationship because you do have the opportunity to get better. But like I remember when I had one of my first fights with one of my closest friends, I was like, whoa, something has changed. Now we're like really close because we understand each other more. But completely normal to have a fight, guys. Like,
and
just repair it well.
Just repair it well. One last example in terms of fights and how they're beneficial is I remember I had a fight with a really close friend. And me and her had a fight, but we realized during this fight or after the fight that we both have different means of resolving the conflict. Like for me, a specific thing that I'm working through or something I've noticed about myself is that like when I'm in a fight, I want to be chased. Like I want someone to be like, even if I push them away, I want them to come back.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
like you want them to hold on to you.
Yeah, I want them to like want me.
Yeah.
You know, so that way I feel like it's actually worth it. And so I remember I had a fight with a friend and I pushed her away and I was like, I don't want to talk to you. Bessie didn't talk to me.
I freaking knew it.
And I remember just being like talking to her afterwards and I was like, why didn't you like talk to me? And she was like, Ian, I'm being respectful like
of your space.
Yeah, and I was like, girl, like if you told me to go away, I would not go away.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, that would annoy me so much. And I was like, oh, word. You know, because like when I said like I don't want to talk to you, I want someone to be like, hey, are you okay? Like I don't want us to blah, blah, blah. You know, but for her, it was like, no, she expected me to come back. But I was like, I'm not going to come back. You know, and then that almost ended our friendships. But eventually we came together and we were like, hey, that was crazy. That was our first fight. You know, and then we resolved it. Now I feel like we can go through anything because we're able to just communicate better. And it's not so awkward too. I think having fights is awkward when it's your first time.
Number 2, know the context before continuing the fight. I think for this fight that we were talking about with you and Kurt, I feel like you guys had different contexts, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
So you guys continued the fight and like ramped it up. You guys kept getting mad at each other and ended up like splitting ways. You went to the internet cafe or whatever and he stayed at his cafe. But like you guys had completely different contexts when fighting. With Kurt, it was like, oh my God, he's been annoying the whole trip. And then you were like, why are you crashing out right now?
This is, for what?
Yeah.
I thought it was like, honestly, I thought it was a power trip. I thought it was like, you're getting mad just so you can assert dominance in this relationship right here.
You know what's really silly? Actually, when I had asked Kurt about the whole fight, he was like, he didn't mention anything about the phone dropping. I had to mention it to him myself, and I'm like, do you remember phone dropping? And he's like, oh, yeah, I just forgot about that. Whoa.
Crazy work.
But he remembered everything before that, which is like, when you're fighting with someone, everyone has their own context, you know?
It's like, where is this coming from?
And it's important to know where it's coming from because if you don't know, it's gonna be a weird fight. Like, you guys aren't even fighting for the right thing or the
Right.
same thing. You guys can't even get on like a
same-
even
Awkward. Level
playing
playing
field.
Level playing field. And so I think before you get into a fight, it would be good to understand why the other person is upset. Before like you like it might be hard because your emotions are so like high, but it's important to just be like, why are you mad? Or maybe that'll get them even more mad now I'm thinking about it. But it's like tell me why. Like I want to hear from you. Like hear their side first. You know? And then they will tell you their side.
Okay, well, you said like, oh, that might make them even more mad. I remember we had a fight and I asked, I'm like, why are you mad? And then you were just like, why do you think, Joey? And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I do be liking it when people tell me, or like they put in the effort to like, oh, this might be why he is upset. Like I feel like that is just a nice thing to do.
Yeah. I guess it just depends on the person, but definitely know the context. I think.
I know the person.
Yeah, know the person, know the context, so you guys can actually have a good fight. Because if you're fighting for like different reasons, then like you guys aren't actually gonna repair the problem, the actual problem.
Yeah. Number 3, repair is only possible if both parties are willing to vulnerably listen, learn, and give it like.
Why are you tripping?
Part 2. Repair is only possible if both parties are willing to vulnerably listen, learn, and communicate. Crazy work.
Whoa, crazy.
That one is pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure that you have an open mind.
Yeah, you have an open mind and you also have patience. I think like one of the hardest things when coming into a fight or like trying to repair a fight actually is like you don't want to listen to the person that you just had a fight with. Like, okay, blah blah, you're mad because of this. Okay, pack it up. Oh my god,
That's
you know?
crazy.
Like you're kind of tired, but you have to if you're willing and like you really want to repair the relationship and fix it, you have to be like, okay, I'll have patience and I'll listen to you.
Yeah, or just give yourself some time to process first if that's how you're gonna react. I would not want to be in a fight with someone who's like, oh my god, like
No, yeah. But, like, obviously you're not showing like the expressions I'm having to the person you're fighting with.
Right.
But you know, if you're mentally thinking that, like just force yourself, like, come on. If you want this relationship to be fixed so bad, you gotta have patience.
Right, and you have to have patience for each other and yourself and all that stuff. Here's a crazy idea. If you're going through a fight with a friend, send them this video. I'll play it. Okay, well, that's the end of our episode. But before you go, it's our favorite section. We're going to do community Q&A.
Wicka.
All right, so today's question comes from Solo Moon Mono 3940, and they ask, I do have one question. How do you guys overcome the fear of asking people to hang out, especially one-on-one? I feel like the ant carrying blue bag meme when I asked people to hang out. I had to resort to making my timetable a highlight in hopes people would ask to hang out.
Okay, my opinion, I know for a fact, will be different than Ian's. For me, the way I hang out with people one-on-one is like, I just ask them, hey, do you want to hang out one-on-one? Which is super bold. But like, for me, I just feel like I'm not very good at being like, I guess I just want it to happen fast.
Joy doesn't know how to be subtle.
I don't actually.
Oh my gosh, I'm so hungry.
No, I remember one of my like closest college friends now. She thought I was pretty aggressive with my approach because I was like, whoa, this is the first day of class, but you're really fun to talk to. We should totally hang outside of class.
Tomorrow.
And I was like, I was like, are you free tomorrow? She's like, yeah, I am. And then we hung out, and then we hung out again. But I feel like I think with my approach, it might work for someone who's like very shy, if the other person's very shy, because they really need that first step or like that push to actually hang out.
Yeah.
So.
I think my perspective is a little bit different because I don't want to be misunderstood as wanting to hit on this person.
Didn't even consider that. Though one of my friends did think I was flirting with them until like months later they were like, "Oh, you're into men. You just you just act
hella
like
flirtatious.
that. You just act like that. You're just aggressively like flirtatious."
I feel like I think a lot of people have misunderstood us because we're very friendly people that they're just like oh my gosh, like they like me. It's like, nah, sir. No, sir. But anyways, for me, the way that I would approach this is I would just try to figure out how that you can hang out in groups. So like, Solo Moon, I know that you are in university because of your other comment and that you play volleyball. Maybe you can say, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. You guys want to go? And then you invite the group. And then in that group, you can see who you like to hang out with. And then slowly you can have one-on-ones with them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would do group first and then do solo hangouts because it's a lot of pressure to do one-on-ones. I've done one-on-one hangouts where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is a waste of my time. Like, I'm so sorry. And also, I felt like I was a waste of someone else's time where I was like, they just weren't into me as a friend. Like, I was boring to them, you know?
Yeah.
Or like we had nothing to talk about because I don't listen to XYZ, you know? So that's our advice. Anyways, thank you so much for commenting. If anyone else has any questions, literally anything, put it down in the comments below. We also want to give a shout out to
at Eve Thomas 08P. Hi, Eve! Thanks for all the love for the podcast, and we hope you have an amazing week.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that you guys have become better fighters because you listen to us. We certainly have, because a lot of these words we didn't know, and so now we know how to talk about it.
If you made it this far, please drop the violin emoji. Hopefully it exists. I'm not sure, but drop the violin emoji in the comments, and we'll give you a movie recommendation.
If you do put in like a little comment with your violin emoji of what genre, then it'll be better because now we know what to like put down.
Yeah, like
otherwise you're just gonna get hella time travel romances from me. Anyway, we'll see you again next Thursday, 8 a.m. PST. Have a good darn week. We love you, tryhards. Good luck with your future fights. You got this.
Bye.
You guys like that one?